So the other item here, okay, Webmaster Tools. To actually set this up, we've got a website where we can go set this up at. So go ahead and open up your web browser. We have the website. Let's see. You can search for it or just get to analytics.google.com. I'll put this in the notes in a moment. Analytics.google.com is one of these. We have 3 to look at: Google Analytics, Google Search Console, and Bing Webmaster Tools. So if we go to Google Analytics, it's going to ask for a sign-in. This is, again, part of the catch about setting this up. You need some account, and you need to do a little bit of a setup internally, and then you have it. So we'll see how this works in a moment, but for the notes, I'll say, for example, Google Analytics. You can go over to analytics.google.com. First time, set up an account with an email. If you already have a Gmail address, it's a lot faster to go through it because it already has you in the system. If you don't have any sort of Google account, Gmail, etc., you'll have to go through a little process to set this up. Now, again, lecture-wise, let's think about this. If you don't have a website to set up, you don't have very much to do. So you're going to it's going to stop you at a certain point because then you can't proceed. You don't have a website. Maybe you have a website, but you don't have your login information. Well, it's going to stop you there as well because you don't have a way to connect Google Analytics with your website, and that requires verification via your website credentials. If you do have the setup, if you do have the access to the to your website and all of that, it might still take a little bit of a setup to do. And usually what I do is I start to show throughout the lecture to a certain point, and then I pause for a little break to confirm to do it in case people want to do it. So set up an email account with an email, input your details, link analytics to your site, and then wait to collect data. All of these analytics accounts, all of these webmaster tools, they basically start working from the moment that you set it up. So from the moment that you set it up, that's when it starts to gather your traffic. What are your keywords that are helping you? It's going to start at that point and go forward from there. It's not going to go back and reveal what was your traffic a year ago if I didn't set it up a year ago. So we will talk about setting it up today, and most likely once you log in, everything will be 0. There's no traffic, there's no hits or whatever, because it's just starting to collect it. When we come back next week, we can look at it in more detail, but today it's about setting it up, looking at it in general, and the next time looking at it in detail, hopefully when we have some data to look at. So I already have a Gmail address that I'm going to log in with. Just pause that right there and log in with this. Okay, so one of the things that happens when I teach this is always slightly different for everyone. If you've already set it up, it looks a certain way. If you're setting up for the very first time, it looks another way. If you haven't logged in recently, it looks another way. So if it doesn't look exact, if mine looks very different than yours, well, of course, raise your hand and we'll see what's different. But it should all look similar. Now, as soon as I log in, it's popping up about try new Google Analytics Mobile. So they've finally created a mobile version where you can look at and keep track of all of this on the go. Personally, I like the full web version because I have a nice big monitor and I can see all of the screens easily and I can type on a real keyboard and all of that. So I usually don't use the mobile app for something this complex because it's just too complex to have on such a small screen. Even on a tablet, I would rather have like a big screen. So I'm going to skip this for the moment. And then it's got search for reports, ask a question about your data, get help. So sometimes there's also sort of like a welcome process to actually to use it. Close that. And in my case, mine's already been set up with a fictional business, Victor's Bakery. If you're brand new to the system, it's going to look slightly different. Let me see if I can get mine to look exactly like yours if you were a brand new user here. This is just the testing account that I use. Okay, so I might not be able to show it exactly as a brand new user because I've already done it before. Is anyone logged in that it looks very different than mine, just so that I can kind of see what your screen looks like?
Because yours has the little house and the icon.
Well, that's just because it's short. You click that, it kind of gets small.
Oh.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's it there. So for some people, what it just looks like is, what would you like to track? It looks like a screen that for you to first set it up. So let me mention about that. So I think I can show a version of that screen. Just bear with me. Let's say I was about to add a new type of account. I think it'll show, yeah, right there. So if this was like your very first time setting it up, there's nothing to look at. Mine was already somewhat set up, and also, you know, the side panel over here might have been open or not. I'll leave it open as it usually is. So the very first time that I go to this, well, it doesn't know what data to show you, what stats or whatever. So you've got to set it up with either a website or a mobile app. So most of us are going to be using a website because the mobile app's much more advanced. But it's got, okay, setting up an account name, website name. So let me show you this. Once you've got it properly set up, you have the ability to work with more than one account. And for most of us, it's going to be one account. What I mean here, in my case, in this view, which I'll show you later, there's a way here for me to show me the data of this website and this website and this website. Well, for me, that I might get hired by clients to do this, I might have 7 websites that I manage, 7 clients. So they're all in a different account. For you, well, you're your own company, you're your own client, so you're only going to have one account. And that's what this is saying right here. What's the account name? Well, the name of my business. And what's the website? The name of my business. So for you, because you're only dealing with one thing, it might look like the exact same thing. But you see, if I was dealing with a client, I would have, you know, Amazing Website is the name of the client. And then their website name is, you know, homepage. And then I would add their link there. For yourself, you know, if I'm doing Victor's Bakery, it can be the same thing. It can be, you know, main site, homepage, whatever. It's like, what's the folder where all of your data is going to be stored in? The folder is the name up here. What is the specific page of data that you're looking at for a specific entity? It's right there. And then what's your address? So here you have the non-secure versus the secured version of your website. You probably don't have the secured version of your website unless you remember paying extra when you set up your website. We'll talk a little bit later also about, well, I don't even have a website, where do I start? We'll cover that a little later. But to make the notes here, the default is you're going to have an unsecure website, and I know it sounds scary, but that's just the default of websites. And you have to pay a little extra to get the HTTPS security. Notice, like on this side up here, I'm on a secure connection, HTTPS. If I go to a website that doesn't have the S, it's not secure, and you get the non-secure version by default. I'll just say over here, note: when you purchase a domain from a provider, and I'll cover this in detail later, from a provider, you will get the unsecure version, the HTTP connection version, by default. You must pay extra yearly to get the secure version. That's the one with HTTPS. It might not matter for your type of website if you have that or not. So, HTTP is good for non-e-commerce types of sites. If it's a blog where I'm writing articles, I'm not selling anything, it's informational, maybe it's a gallery, my art gallery, but I'm not selling anything. If it's a non-e-commerce site, you'll be fine without the secure version. On the opposite then, a must have for e-commerce sites. This one is a must-have in terms of it's going to penalize you. The search engines will penalize you if you're collecting users' information, such as a login info, credit card info, and all of that, and you're doing it in a non-secure connection. That is one of the things that the search engines will definitely nowadays penalize you on. You know, a long time ago in the ancient days, 3 years ago, the search engines might not have penalized you as much because it was just a new concept, new technology, sort of. But nowadays, the search engines really look at that. So you'll be penalized if you collect user info and don't have the secure connection, also known as SSL. If you don't remember buying an SSL certificate when you set up your website, you probably don't have it. Now, I am starting to see more and more some of these providers are giving you a free year of SSL, and then after that it's not free anymore. And we'll talk about prices and all of that later. But
if you have a web page has the info you collect, the email,
yeah, any personal information nowadays, because of a little bit more importance of privacy and security, the search engines are starting to have that as one of the things that it ranks you on, that if you are collecting even their email, that's personal information. I don't want everyone to get my email. I don't want everyone to get my email. It's personal. Yeah, the search engines could penalize you if you're collecting emails without security. This is the bigger issue when it's e-commerce, because credit card information, home addresses and such are usually required when you sell products. Okay, so back on this screen, let's say I have victorsbakery.com, .biz, whatever. There's a bunch of dots, whatevers. We'll cover those later. And I don't have the secure version, so I have to select unsecure. You just don't select it and it works. It has to be set up. We'll cover that later. Industry category, yes.
Can we set it up without having a website?
You will get stuck at a certain point, but yeah, you'll be able to proceed 1 or 2 more screens, but then after that we won't be able to do too much with it.
that out there is mobile pertaining to Snapchat and Instagram?
No, that's related to, if it says mobile app here, this is related to you having an actual app on the app stores.
Oh, okay.
On Google Play or iTunes App Store, a real app that people can download on their phone, not like your mobile, not like your social media profile, but an app.
And that brings another question then. So, can you tie your analytics to your Facebook page and your?
Analytics will let you tie it to certain types of websites, but not every kind. To my knowledge, I don't believe you can tie the Facebook one because they're competitors, and Facebook has its own huge system of analytics, and it doesn't really want to share its data, and it gets in trouble when it does. So not everything can be connected to Google Analytics. Usually you find that out by going into the settings of that website, and somewhere there'll be an analytics link, and then you can link it. But if there isn't that sort of thing, you usually cannot.
Oh, that's how you link it from their own.
Usually from their app back over to this app. Yeah. Yes.
Can you please help me out a little bit because I'm completely lost. I can't see the same. I can see the same page.
Let me take a quick look. Yes, like I said, sometimes it's very different for people. And even if it's not exactly the same as this is when we do like break a lag time and such just to confirm. That's if I can kind of go into but you already have it set up. Are you trying to create a brand new account? Or do you seem to have something set up?
Yes, I would like to create a new one.
Okay, so if you already got one, we can use what you've got. If you want to make a new one, we could set it up. These are all free. They can be deleted. But again, yeah, it's a little setup sometimes. Industry category. There's a variety of listed possibilities here. You do want to select perhaps the best one so that you can get found and categorized and organized a little better. And all of this stuff can be changed. Later on, if I want to add or remove something, I can change this. But right now, let's see, is there anything about bakeries? Nothing about bakeries. What about food? There's food and drink. So in my case, I found something. If you don't find a particular category you fit into, we have other, and that'll be just fine. If you go into the wrong category, if I'm Victor's Bakery but I go into real estate, it's not really catastrophic that you're in the wrong spot, but you won't get the best settings and features out of it, and it can be changed, and we'll see how later in case you did it wrong. But I'll put food. Time zone looks fine. Data sharing. They're all recommended. They're not really required for this to fully function. But what all of this is about is, this is about to collect a lot of data about your website. And if you're comfortable about that, that's fine. They say this is going to be kept secure and confidential. For example, if you ever need tech support, well, they're going to need to look at your data. So that's why they say recommend to leave that on. Give Google marketing specialists and your sales specialists access. So this is kind of tied together in one in terms of Google might contact you saying, okay, you're doing kind of all right, but how about if you use these other features? And can we look at your data to give you more advice? So this is the one that I sort of feel like that's not quite necessary. Benchmarking, I kind of feel that one's not necessary. Give this data to Google anonymously so that they can figure out how how your site compares to another site. Later on, we will see how does my site compare to another site. Well, that's the other site giving their data to Google so that we can compare with us. Do you want to do the opposite? Do you want to give your data to Google anonymously to compare with others? That's sort of the one I feel like, it's not quite necessary. And Google Products and Services is also here. Share analytics data to help improve. This is another one about sort of extra. The only one I sort of feel is any value at the moment is the tech support one, in case you ever get any tech support questions. But if you leave them all on, it's supposed to be anonymous and secure, so no big deal. If you turn them all off, that should also not affect your account. So this is whatever you want to set it up as. I'll leave it as the default. And then get tracking ID. There's a big old thing that no one reads, but everyone agrees to, and basically it's all about you're not going to abuse the system, you're not going to try to hack someone else's account, you're not going to abuse it, etc., etc. And then I'll say yes, I accept that. And there's another one again, you can accept that.
Jeez.
If you don't accept them, you can't use the service, and that's how it is a lot of times nowadays. Okay, so we have then, we'll take a break in a moment, but we have a really detailed screen here. Let me kind of jump around on a couple of things. Let me just show you what this is because it is confusing. At the top, I have, on this pop-up right here, all accounts, main website, I have a pop-up where I have these 3 columns, And on the left side, I have two websites I've set up. One that I did last semester that I deleted, and one that I did right now. So if I've got different clients, they would all be listed here. You are your only client most likely, so up here you only have one listing. Then we have a column of properties and views, and we'll look at these in detail soon. But this is one navigation thing to be aware of. What am I looking at? What screen am I looking at? Further, when you're actually looking at the data of a particular website, from here, notice I have a little back arrow, then I have 3 more columns of stuff to look at. Google Analytics honestly is very complex. There's a lot of screens, there's a lot of data to look at and understand. But when you first set it up like we just did, it's showing me here under my property of this website, I was under the tracking info, tracking code screen. This is the last piece of setup that I need to attach this unique code to my website. And it says in order to do that, you need to copy and paste this code. This is your global tracking code. Copy and paste this code as the first item in the head of every web page you want to track. If you already have a global sites tag on your page, simply add the config file. Well, all of that sounds like gibberish and high tech, and I don't understand. Well, yes, it is a little technical at this point. And it's saying here, you need to copy and paste this into your site. But that's not just like going to my site and pasting it in on the home screen. It says I have to paste it in basically in the code of my website. This is the part that we always get stuck at, because depending on people's types of website or how tech savvy and stuff they are, there are a variety of ways to do it. So I'm going to write a couple of notes. I'm going to take a break so that if people want to do this individually, this is really a better thing to do individually on a little break than try to do a lecture, because everyone's a little different. But for the notes, before the break, I will say, after you add your website address, Google Analytics gives you a piece of code to add to your site for it to fully work. You must copy and paste that code into the code view of your website in the head block. Again, if that doesn't make sense, we're going to do some one-on-one in a moment. But that's the final step to make all of this work, because the theory of this, we want to set this up and get your data for your website. We don't want it to, we don't want for you to get access to someone else's data. Google doesn't want that. Everyone's data is only for the owner of the website. Question?
Yeah, can you talk about, like if we have 40 pages, it says put it on every web page that you want to track. How, can you talk about which pages are important to track?
They're all important to track, but it depends on how your website is set up. If you've got a WordPress site, individually, we can use a plugin so that it automatically pastes that code on all of our pages, and we're done.
What's it called?
Well, that's why we'll talk one-on-one. There's also, if you're doing a Dreamweaver site, okay, well now that one I do have to maybe put it in my template file in Dreamweaver, and then it'll copy to everyone else. Maybe I'm using Weebly. Okay, Weebly has a certain space in their settings screen to plug it in. So everyone's a little different. We're going to take a break at this point to talk one-on-one if you want to fully set it up. But this is where it gets different for everyone, because everyone's got a different kind of website, or no website, and it's just something you'll do later. Let's take our first break. It's 10:35. We'll take a break until 10:45, and then we'll be back.